Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian and it's just me this week to preview yet another game against a team in the top 8. Those who have listened to the pod throughout the year will know that Lockie is currently in the UK, and with life, work, time zones, all of that, we unfortunately just couldn't make it work and find a time to record this week. So you're stuck with me for a bit of a solo pod, but there is plenty to get through as always. So let's dive right in. Carlton versus Geelong. It's the 9th annual Carlton Respects game. It's an important initiative by the club, really to bring spotlight to and really to educate around violence against women, something that unfortunately it's very prevalent in society today and it needs addressing. And it's just great to see that Carlton is at the forefront of such a big cause. And I guess on a football note, we're kind of yet to win a Carlton Respects game. We're currently 0-8. It needs to change. It needs to change this week. And for me, I think that this clash against Geelong, it's all about what have we learned? This is the first repeat fixture for us in 2024. Can we right the wrongs and even the ledger? And the last time we played them, it was obviously a loss, but we were pretty positive after it. We kind of gave them a little bit of an out, saying that we felt we had chances to win that game. We put ourselves in a position to do so. It's probably just that final third that let us down, and we allowed some easy shots for Geelong. They were a lot more efficient than us, but it wasn't one of those really bad losses like a Sydney where we weren't in it at all. We had chances, we had opportunities, and we kind of gave them one of those this year. And so now it's time to fix that, time to overcome that and find out what we actually have learned from this. And what's interesting is after that game, Vossi came out and he was probably the most aggressive he has been about the team and the performance, saying that that performance was unacceptable. Do we see us actually respond to that? We saw after that, we started to get a bit more form headed into it towards the bye. Team defense lifted once we started to get a bit of the cattle back. But this is that time to truly respond, which I know I've said a little bit already. But when the coach has gone out in the media against you, against an opposition that you do lose the game, I want to see how they come out firing straight from the get-go. And I think it'd be a massive statement if we do beat Geelong. We've spoken about it a little bit so far this season, particularly in our mid-season review that we dropped earlier this week, saying that we're kind of that second seed at the moment. Sydney clear number 1, but who are the other contenders? And we've put our name well and truly up there in that conversation. We've just got to continue to kind of prove that and get those wins on the board. The ladder position right now, we're sitting in second. We win this game. Not only is it a bit of a statement because of the opposition you are playing, but it just starts to create a little bit more separation on the ladder and pushes us up the ladder away from the rest of the pack. Lose this game and all of a sudden you're back in it fighting for the scraps. So I think that this game, there's almost a little bit more riding on it just so we can start to build a little bit of a resume and a little bit of distance on the ladder. And interestingly enough, after the bye, week off, what are we going to be like when we get out there this week? And a lot of people sometimes worry, are you a little bit more sluggish coming off the back of a bye? Best part is Geelong also had the bye this week. So both teams, there's no excuses. Both teams are going to have to deal with the sluggishness. Both are fresh enough to get up and about for this game. So I'm very excited. And taking a little bit of a look at Geelong right now, I think they'll be a bit disappointed in their form at the moment. They started the season really well, have dropped off a little of late, lost to Port and GWS at home that they'll really rue. Had a big start against Sydney. Over the last sort of month since Sydney have really been firing, probably the best showing for at least a quarter or a half of football compared to anyone else. And they'll be really disappointed that they didn't push Sydney for more and be able to get that win. Sydney just too strong, overpowering them in the end. And I think at the start of the season, at least when we played them last, Geelong were a flag contender. They were in that conversation. The moment they've dropped down to 6th, then there's a lot of question marks around them. And they've had the bye. They've consolidated. They've spoken about it. They're refreshed. They're going to come out really, really strong against us. And like us to a degree, they can't afford to lose this game or lose too many. They can't afford to start falling down the ladder and almost missing out on finals. This will be a statement win for Geelong, much like it's a statement win for us because, as I was saying, we're that second seed. We're the team that's starting to get spoken about as a true contender. So it'll mean a little bit for them if they do get up and about. So I'm expecting the very best from Geelong, the best Geelong you can face. I feel like we're going to get that. Of course, they're getting all their players back for this. Dangerfield, Henry, Conway, if you can throw him into it. Of course, it happens every single time. And yeah, last time the general consensus was that that's the best that Geelong had to offer in that game, that we were far from our best. Well, I think it's time to prove that. You can say that after a loss and say, okay, can Geelong get any better than that? We've clearly got a lot to improve upon, but it's that time now. We get to play them. We get to avenge the loss. Go out there and prove it. And I just don't want to see us play the exact same game. I don't want to allow Geelong such easy looks in front of goal. I don't want them to be as efficient. We can't be having that. Let's right those wrongs. So let's jump straight into Grill the Corner. We got all the listener questions in. Thanks for sending them across. If you want your questions in, head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook. We mainly chuck the questions out on Twitter and Instagram. And the first one here is from Vinny Labate. Hopefully I have nailed that last name. You know, I'm a white boy. I don't know. I don't have any culture, basically. But he has asked, Big Vinny has said, if Martin and Motlop are both fit, would you play them against Geelong? Now, the injury report has just dropped at time of recording, which basically says that Martin isn't fit. Motlop has played a couple of games in the twos now, really performed in the last showing to put his hand up for selection. Spoiler for the team changes, I have Motlop in regardless. And strangely, if Martin was fit as well, I probably would say no. I'd just stick with Motlop for the time being. I still think that Martin has a big role to play, and he's as close to best 22 as anyone when he's fit, firing, ready to go. We saw in that Melbourne game the difference he makes in our forward line as a presence on field. But I want him to get his body right. I want us to take as much precaution as possible. And once he is fit to play football, I think he needs to play at least a week in the VFL, because last time we got him straight back in the ones, got injured, and he's been out ever since. So let's just take the safe approach with a guy like Jack Martin. The next question is from Dan_Luke11. And he's asked probably the toughest question anyone has ever asked, and I'll do my best to try to answer it, but it's, how do you quell Jeremy Cameron's influence on the game? This man is the most difficult matchup in all of AFL. Kicked 5 goals against us last time, always kills us, as he does against most teams, but hasn't been in the most greatest form pretty much since he kicked that bag of 5 against us. Has not had any of those big games since. And even when saying that, it's hard to know if you can stop someone of his quality when he is firing up and about. He works so much with his tank. He gets higher up the ground, and that's difficult to stop. Do you play a key defender on him? Do you mix it with both? Do you have someone going with him in the midfield? How do you communicate those changes? Because it's all about him pushing you higher up the ground and then bursting back to goal and burning you with his work rate. What's the best matchup? Is it Kemp? Is it McGovern? Are we going to cycle a few players through him? I'm not really sure. I know that's awful, so apologies, Dan. I don't necessarily have a question for just straight up matchup, but I'm hoping that a lot of what can fix this and what can quell his influence compared to last time is that our backline's a lot more settled this time. Our team defense as a whole, and particularly the back 6 and 7, it's definitely the most settled and the best that it's been all year in the past month or so. I think we've got a good variety of players down in defense that can play a multitude of roles. We've got Sard down there as well. And if we can just structure up well enough as a team and not give them as simple and easy opportunities as last time, don't give them the space, limit the amount of inside 50s, and that's going to do a lot to stop Jeremy Cameron. That's definitely what I would believe. And one of the big things that might have even been the week after we played them, or a few weeks after when Melbourne defeated Geelong, that Tom McDonald played a really good role on Cameron really nullified his impact on the contest. And I thought that it was a really good coaching job all up by Goodwin and Melbourne in the way that they were able to just be a little bit more patient with ball in hand. And I think that that's something that we maybe should look at, particularly because we had so much ball in the front half for us last time we played them, but we almost went for those deeper entries. We tried to get the ball in quick, which does work for us at times. We probably just weren't making the smart decision, and it was hurting us on turnover because we weren't set up as well the other way. And when you've got a team like Geelong that when they move the ball, it's quick, and they're so good skill-wise that they can just burn through you very, very quickly. I wonder if he'll take a little bit more of a pragmatic and slow, patient approach with our build-up. Times we've seen that against Port Adelaide. I thought when we needed to slow the game down, we did. And then very similar against Essendon. We didn't want to get sucked in to their really fast-paced football. And at times we just were happy to pass the ball around, have that kick mark game. If we can maybe do that just outside the front third, that could also help us stop the influence of Cameron because we're not allowing the ball to go down the other end as quickly. Those are a couple of suggestions, but let me know if you're watching this right now on YouTube. Drop it in the comments. How do we stop Jeremy Cameron? Is it possible? Is it a thing you can do when a player is this good? And who plays on him? I want to know. And if you're listening in audio form, head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner and let us know there. The sort of last question, we had a few throw this in. It wasn't necessarily a question as such. It was from Darren Hodge and Mickey C were the big culprits with this, saying that they were basically just very bullish and were asking how big a margin is it going to be this week? Is it 10 goals? Is it triple digits? How big and how much are we defeating Geelong by? And look, I love the confidence, boys, but I have a big feeling this is going to be a bit more of a closer game. Geelong are a really, really smart team. They've got a lot of quality. They always match up well against us. The past few years in particular, there's been a lot of close games. We've been able to get over the line finally in a couple of them, but they're still really well coached, well drilled. They're getting players back. They have a lot to prove in this game as much as we do. I am definitely not taking them lightly. If I'm given a prediction on what the margin is, I'm going to say it's about 12 to 17 points at this stage. If we can do more than that, I'll be very happy. Big win against Geelong would be a massive statement. However, they're just such a good team. They're a well-run club. It's hard to think you're ever going to beat them by a ridiculous margin. But thanks for getting in touch with the questions. Let's move on to the blueprint to victory. And most importantly, team changes. We got the injury report, and there's quite a lot to be positive about for once. I think this might be the first time ever on the podcast that I'm actually pretty happy after copying one of these injury reports on a Tuesday night. We've got Fantasia, AC joint is a test. Pitternet with the finger is a test. Cunningham also a test with the calf. Chera is 1 week away. Well, unfortunately not line up against Geelong, but against Richmond, he may be good to go. Martin is not available. They're going to assess him again next week. So, I mean, honestly, who knows with this man? Figure it out. Don't rush him back. Try to get his body right for the pointy end of the season. And then Cottrell, which is probably some good news with his stress response in his foot, 2 to 3 weeks away, which for a guy like him that, I mean, he's had a similar injury before. He's had some troubles with that foot. So now that he's hurt it again, and those stress injuries, they can sometimes be out for a very, very long time. So to know he's only a few weeks away is very, very positive. So with that, and let me know, guys, if you're watching this, what are your team changes? Who comes in? Who comes out? Let us know on the socials. Links are in the description and the show notes. My changes, I'm starting very, very simple. I am going Motlop comes in. Durden was the sub, but he makes way coming straight out of the whole team, which means that Carroll would come out of the 22 and drop in as the sub. That is pretty much the one change I am very sure of. Happy to nail that down. Apart from that, I'm curious with the Pitternet thing. I know a lot have moved quite towards this. Let's just go with the one ruck. DeConing looked amazing while Pitto was out. The turnover game is perfect. But look, if Pitto's a test, if he's good to go, we know how much Vossi loves that two ruck system. Looks like that is going to be the preferred option. Last time Pitto played Geelong, it was one of his best games he's played for the club. He looked amazing at ground level, was getting some tackles, was putting the pressure on, winning the ball, getting those clearances for us. Now that we've got a bit more of a stable lineup, we've got a bit more cohesion, we've got guys like Sard that can move the ball from the defensive half. I kind of am excited to see the two ruck dynamic. It'll happen at some stage in the back half of the season. I want to know what it's like when we've got a full strength team that's in a bit of form. Because Pitto came in and things weren't amazing. We didn't have some other elements around. So maybe he comes in. And if he comes in, who comes out? That is kind of the question. So I think it would probably mean Carroll comes out of the team as well, which means someone else needs to become the sub. And it might be stiff, but maybe it's a guy like Matt Kennedy where if Chincotta is playing a tagging role in the midfield, if Elijah Hollands is playing in the midfield as well, is there a spot for him in there with the amount of rotations? Maybe not. And maybe he is a lot better of a sub than a guy like Carroll because he's a little bit better of a player, has a high ceiling right now. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Matt Kennedy would be a really handy sub, can play in a multitude of positions. And he's in a bit more better form at the moment, unfortunately, than a guy like Jack Carroll. It's stiff on Kennedy, but I think balance-wise with the midfield, if you're bringing in a slower player, I guess like a Pitto, do you need Kennedy and Hewitt? I think I'm moving him to the sub. So the other question when I'm looking at the lineup, and it's a big question that has been thrown out there, now that we've got this new role for a guy like Alex Chincotta, is who does he tag? Now, I'm not convinced on my answer with this. I'm going to kind of go through how I'm seeing this right now. And I think it's going to be really interesting. Geelong, they don't really have that out-and-out influential midfielder that probably makes sense like it did with Butters and Merritt, those type of players. I think if Dangerfield comes back in, which it looks like he will, maybe that makes sense. And we know Dangerfield likes to spend a fair amount of time down forward as well. And with Chincotta being that defender, we've seen those shutdown roles. Maybe that this is the best and well-balanced move we can make. The other one that maybe excites me for how influential they are is a guy like Max Holmes. He's been playing a little bit of midfield time, a little bit obviously off the halfback, but he's just such a big mover of the football for them. And when he's around it, he really makes things happen. Would be interesting to see whether Chincotta plays a bit more of a defensive half-forward role and how that would play with some of our structures as well. But I don't know. I really think that if the amount of Geelong games I've watched this season, Max Holmes has been the one that's impressed me, that it looks like when he's around it, they're playing their best football. If you stop Max Holmes, is that the key to winning this game? Potentially. Maybe that one's that makes the most sense. But apart from that, maybe we look to move Chincotta out of the midfield again. Do we look for that small defensive role? And there's probably two players I think make a lot of sense. One of those is a guy like Brian Myers, who does also want to push up a little bit. He's very high half forward, loves to win the ball around those stoppages, big burst player for them, big in their transition and getting that ball inside 50, really good user, gets a lot of their goal assists. And this is probably the one that excites me the most, because if you can stop their front half and maybe a bit more of their effectiveness that they were so good at last time, I think that gives us a big chance ahead of things. And also, it allows us to play him in the defense that we know we can kind of do. It's the best of both worlds, bit of midfield, bit of defense. And the only question off the back of this is, do we have too many defenders if Chincotta is added to it? It's a back eight, really. And I think we might do so. We might have too many if we play Chincotta on a guy like Brian Myers. So that probably means a guy like maybe Cowan might miss out, which is very stiff. I think he's been playing some good football. But just on team balance, if that's the role we want, Cowan might go out and then maybe Kennedy comes back into the team. Maybe that is what we do, but that's going to be another interesting thing. And I think the other guy that he could probably play on is, of course, Stengel. He's absolutely flying right now. 9 goals in the past 4 games. And we know how good Cincotta has been as a small defender on the best small forwards in the competition. Kept Papley to 2 goals and absolutely no influence on the game. Cozzy to 1 goal, and probably most impressively, Bobby Hill to 1 and no real impact against us. And there's a role there if we want to go with it. And I think I'd probably leaning towards more of that defensive role rather than a midfield tagger, given the players that Geelong have. In saying that, I'm not 100% sold on any tagging option. So let me know in the comments, who is the best player for Alex Cincotta to man up on this week? And how do you think that role is going to play out? Or do we scrap it? Do we not tag anyone? And if so, how are we getting the best out of a guy like Cincotta? It's a really interesting discussion. I want to know your thoughts on it. Drop it in the YouTube comments and head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner and let me know. So the other thing that we need to look at before we wrap up the preview episode is, what do you want to see? Big segment every single week. And probably that biggest thing that I want to see is, what have we learned from last time? I said this at the start of the episode, and last time we didn't defend the ground. We let way too many easy transitions, and we just can't give up those easy looks at goals. And conversely, I think we need to create better chances the other way. We were dominating where the ball was. It was in our front half for so much of that game. We just could not string together the best look at goal. We were 40 out. It was inside 50 after inside 50, a little bit like Essendon the other week. Just couldn't get anything effective. And when you hurt so much the other way, what have you learned from that? Again, Vossi labeled this an unacceptable performance. So how do we write that? How do we make this an acceptable performance that leads to a win? I need to see a response from the boys. And I mentioned, is this about going slower, being a little bit more patient in our build-up to make sure we create the right chances outside that sort of 30 to 40 meter mark in front of goal, rather than just bombing it straight in to Charlie. I know we love it, and it's a massive strength for us to get the ball in deep and quick to a guy like Curnow, but maybe because they're expecting that, they're so good at intercepting and structuring up. They're probably one of the better, I'd say, top 2 or 3 defensive teams in the competition. Do we use Charlie as a little bit of a decoy? Go with him if he's obviously open, but rather than the play for us like normal, get the ball in quick, get it in long, do we just sit the ball up, start chipping it around 30, 40 meters out and find those options? Because Geelong might be expecting us to go deep. Is that where we get a little bit of an advantage? It'll be very interesting to see how Vossi and the coaches strategize in this. We've started to see over the last month that they've got a few bags of tricks up their sleeves. I want to see a little bit more against Geelong because we know Scott is such a good coach. How does Vossi outcoach one of the best in the business? And as I said, I think the back line is a lot more settled this time around. The team defense is the best it's been all season. This is probably a way that we can sort this out. And we've got that variety of defenders that can probably match up against the best of Geelong. They've got a lot of good mid-sized small forwards, a lot of dynamic marking types that can lead up and kick goals, along with the 2 big goal kickers like Hawkins and Cameron. So there's a lot that you need to defend, but I think we're probably the best we've been all year to have to defend that and have to overcome that obstacle. The other thing that I want to see from this game, bit of a stupid one, but I just don't want to see Zach Tui have another day out against us. He's another one of these players that all of a sudden they're fit to play us. If he comes into this game, there's no way we're giving him 3 goals again. That was disgusting. Like, look, Zach Tui, really good player, but not anymore. He should not be kicking 3 goals against you. And particularly, I don't want to see it, considering he played for us. I can't have Zach Tui kicking a bag and doing a little Irish jig. I don't want to see it. And the last thing that I want to see from this game, maybe it's a little bit of a rocket for a player. Maybe it's harsh. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this guy's form right now. One of our better players, but I just want to see Sam Walsh absolutely back to his best. He was really down against Essendon. Like, I know him and Cripps and a few of the others were. Our best players didn't have their best showing. But look, Sam Walsh, he's set his standards so high. And since he's come back, he's been a little bit patchy, had some good games, had some poor ones. And even when he has been quite good, I look at that Port Adelaide game, winning a lot of the footy, getting it in good areas. His disposal was something that really let him down, and he probably wasn't as effective with the possessions that he was getting. So I'm really just looking for that absolute peak Sammy Walsh, real polished performance from him. And we know he's had that tough run with the back injury, missed a lot of time, missed that sort of bulk of preseason as well. Maybe he's just needed the bye. He's needed a little break, and his body was not allowing him to get the best out of himself off that limited conditioning compared to everyone else that's been able to be fit for the whole year. So, yeah, I'm really bullish on this, and I expect him to be back to his best, but it's something I want to see. And it's not just him winning the ball and using it well. I want to see a few snags from Sammy Walsh. We haven't seen that enough this season. So I said this in the final last season, and he whipped out the Dior mouthguard and gave us an absolute ripper celebration. And I want to see another big trademark, weird rogue celebration out of nowhere from Sammy Walsh, because I don't know where he thinks of these things, but they're always the craziest, weirdest thing you'll ever see. So I'm penciling that in. And this time next week, when we are chatting about us pumping Geelong, like a few of you fellas were talking about, I want to be able to sit here with Lockie and tick off a big Sammy Walsh performance, goal, and celebration. But let me know what you want to see from this game. What are the keys to winning this? How do we stop Jeremy Cameron? What are your team changes? Let us know everything in the YouTube comments down below. Make sure you like and subscribe to Blue Abroad. There's a lot of great content on here. It's not just me. There's plenty of others to listen to, a lot of different opinions, which we always love to see. And if you're listening in audio form, we're dropping a few episodes at the moment. We're doing these previews every single week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. But we're also hopefully going to have a separate review episode, which will be exactly where you listen to this in podcast form. And if you're watching in video form, it'll be available on our own YouTube channel. All links to this will be in the description, will be in the show notes. Easiest way to stay up to date, follow us on the socials, subscribe and follow where you interact with us and get these episodes, and they're going to be there for you every single week. You don't need me to tell you. You don't have to search it up. Going to be very, very simple, but I'm very excited about this. The bye week was nice for a little bit of relaxation, but I need the footy, and I'm excited to go out there again against one of the better teams, make a statement, beat Geelong, start to kick away in second position. I absolutely love it. Up the bloody baggers. See you guys next time.